Hello and welcome to Neverwinter with Argon. So we have a new executive producer, Brett Norton at Cryptic Studios. Now what does this mean for Neverwinter in general? Well, they had a stream where they went and answered questions from the audience to the stream. You can watch the entire vlog, link in the video description. So I'm just going to quickly go over a summary of the entire stream and what was kind of said and how Brett is going to contribute overall to Neverwinter as a game. First of all, Brett Norton has played the game pretty regularly, it seems. He has a quite expansive experience, from running the certain dungeons to even experiencing the tough, hard, orangey grind of those Sharandar bounties. The Sharandar recipes, they have been worked upon. They're even on the preview server. You can test them out for yourselves. However, it doesn't seem they're up front in any priority list, so potentially like still next module before they will come around. They've talked about loadout bugs, yes, and as a result of fixing the loadout bug from enchantments, they created a new one with companions, and this should be fixed next patch. They asked about, is there going to be a roadmap for the following months and year? Yes, they're going to upcome with a roadmap. However, they are still working on what their solid plans will be for the 6 months after, let's say, August, so they don't want to promise anything now, so a roadmap is in progress. They asked about what plans would be for like bug fixes, and overall he did emphasize a lot on introducing different quality of life fixes for players, not just fixes, just things like extra inventory space for professions and also appearance items and all sorts of different things like sorting through companion powers. Like when you have a massive list of those, yeah, it gets pretty frustrating to find a specific companion power you want. Then they asked about the Bard. Yes, the Bard, they are first working on the different fixes and focusing mainly on the Minstrel Paragon path, that's the healer one, and then secondly the Songblade, and that shall be focused on ASAP within the next few months, hopefully sooner than late. He did say though that other classes won't be neglected and that wizards will most likely be looked at next, with having a bit more of an update with the powers and their usefulness. Somebody asked what's the future for Strongholds. Well, initially they intend to just refresh the shops and the vendors what you can buy with guild marks and make sure those kind of rewards and things are updated so that you can get some useful items. Then somebody asked why did they take out demo from the public queue. The demo was removed because of the very low success rates. They initially had it in there and were hoping that the success rates would improve, so they want to look at overall all of kind of the dungeons, skirmishes and trials in those public queues and make sure they are balanced with one another better, make sure they have rewards that are balanced across them as well, and in future content make it so that you have like content that's specific for private queue content and content that's specific for public queue content. Will most likely come out with different versions, and they did mention something along the lines of standard version of the trial possibly being made for, let's say, the trial queue. And otherwise he looked at some different mechanics, like when you have a tank switch in a public queue, it doesn't work so well because of the resulting you're playing with a tank you don't know, and you might not even have the same language, and thus you have this communication barrier, and those mechanics are generally just going to be removed with a public queue so that it can be much higher success rate and less skill ceiling in regards to coordination between players you don't even know. And otherwise, of course, they want to look at balancing the rewards, making sure you have better payoff for time spent. Then somebody asked about the RNG in Vault of Stars, and they said, yeah, RNG is fine in some cases, but when you have exceptionally low odds, and like the executive producer looked at, let's say, his odds to obtain the Witch's Sash in the Halloween event and figured out that it was highly unlikely to obtain it with the remaining time he had left in the event, and that's just demoralizing. And as a developer, you can actually look at these drop chances. It was the same with his Sharandai bounties. He could see the drop rates to get this particular item was ridiculously low. He's already spent months trying to get the collection of those companion items and still not obtaining it, and so he wants to implement something more like Street Breaker systems so that you will have a higher chance to obtain the certain items you want, and thus you aren't there spending, let's say, thousands of runs to or thousands of tries to obtain something you want, like in Vault of Stars to get the reagents for the ring. And also, let's say I want a particular legendary ring at the end chest, I might have to do the dungeon 1,000 times to get the particular ring I want. It's garbage, and they will be looking at something like that. Somebody asked about update to lockboxes like the knockbox, and yeah, they said that you should expect to see an update to the current lockboxes and upcoming lockboxes, a system more like the Nox box, where you have streak breakers. You open, let's say, 150 and you get the max tier reward. Somebody asked about the combat system. Are they going to come out with bigger changes like they've done in the past? And no, they want to do smaller improvements and no new big changes. No new rating system and so on, but they will look at how right now you can see how when you stack more offensive stats and more item level, let's say on a DPS, you're really reducing your survivability, and they're looking towards how can they adjust this and make sure that it's scalable when you go higher and higher item level and so on. Somebody asked about the Embracer group, how Cryptic Studios got like a new publisher. All they really do is look at publishing and marketing of Neverwinter, and that's about it. They don't have any creative decisions within Neverwinter. Now, some big news was there's going to be a new hunt system like Barovia. Unfortunately, not until module 23. And if you've ever done Barovia the campaign and you've ever done those hunts where you get your posters, it's a really cool system. You get put in a different instance and you go and you hunt down your hunt boss in certain locations, and you get him down to a certain health pool, and then he translocates to another area and you hunt him down. That was just really awesome the way it was set up with having all the different cards. But we can look with the next module, something inspired from the Barovia Hunt system, but actually on a larger scale, and we should see some marketing of it, like some leaks or some trailers and so on in the next few months. And then Nitocris asked for Brett to give like a reassurance to the community, and he says he plays the game a lot. He plays a barbarian, a paladin, healer. He wants to improve the overall general quality of life for players, get rid of those biggest pain points for the player base, and try and grow new players. And overall, figure out what's next after level 20. Once you hit level 20, they want to smoothen out the path, the progression system, so that you can easier find your path forward on what to do next. And otherwise, they're not going to try like nerf things that everybody's using, and then people will still use the nerfed thing because it's still the only good option out there. They want to try and just give more competable options that just compete with what we currently have, rather than just reducing what we have, if you know what I mean. So that would be an example with the Band of Air. He didn't exactly say that, but I would assume it's going to be something along the lines of that. Somebody asked about enchantments in the Tradebar store, and yes, they said they do have plans for that upcoming, but not likely going to be any max rank, probably just rank 1s or 2s in the Tradebar stores. They did ask about collars and making them easier to upgrade. It is intended for collars to be a big long grind, but they said they might look into ways to make it a bit easier. Somebody asked, is there any update with the Mythic gear on preview? And that's essentially just put there so that we can preview gear that might come down the road and give our feedback on it. For example, if we see that 1 or 2 pieces of the gear is going to be utterly useless and never used, then we make sure to say so and give our feedback of potentially how they could make it better. Somebody asked, will CTA ever come back? That's Call to Arms events. They had some pretty good rewards back then, and yet they said they're going to look at revising older events, trying to make them have that appointment system with the tokens of participation and achievement, much like we have right now with the Harvester of Nightmares event. And then somebody asked, what is the release plans moving forward? And they plan to release at least 4 to 2 major releases per year. We would prefer if they could have at least 3 per year. And then smaller updates, season passes, and events between the gaps of those major releases. Somebody asked about episodic content, and it's not likely to ever come back like New Sharondar. They found it was too much pressure on the devs to, let's say, not leak things, to know, is this supposed to go to live now or not? And overall, it was too much work on the devs, apparently. Somebody asked about possible balance to the classes. They said, again, they're going to focus on the Bard, then the Wizard, and possibly the Paladin as the first 3 classes they're looking at with regards to balance. Somebody asked about the Companions of the Hall, and yeah, they'll most likely come back. They never really want to release something and never release it again, so don't expect that to be the case in this game at all. In the Zen store, any future plans? They said rotate things in and out rather than just keep adding to the mess that can end up being the Zen store. They want to introduce quality of life improvement options, profession storage, changing things in the store, and as I said, rotating things, but also with the Wondrous Bazaar, like the Astral Lockbox, how they just recently changed up the loot tables on those boxes. Somebody asked about PvP, and no plans there. Possibly different ways to obtain the rewards that you can get for PvP at the moment. I would have my eyes set on the Vanguard banner. Somebody asked about the dragon eggs, and I said possibly make a way to make them available again. But again, there's no major effort into doing so. Somebody asked about companions, and even the developer himself said he had a Xuna and then she became nerfed. At this point going forward, they ideally want to, when they release a new companion, that it should fulfill a specific role. It should have a niche area that it fits into and is good at, rather than just releasing a companion and it's all around just meh. And they want to target companions that are possibly not viable at the moment, nobody's using them because they're just pretty terrible, and try and buff those up so that they're also in an area of good status that they would be viable to use compared to, let's say, others. Somebody asked about the Foundry, and no, that's dead. There's no plan to bring it back. It's a huge burden on the devs to maintain, and the cost is just too high. Somebody asked about a test server for consoles, and yes, that is a plan. They're working on making it happen. Nick Chris, the community manager, asked what would be the top 3 priorities as executive producer. And he said, working on quality of life, players and devs, making sure they have regular content, and lastly, improving existing current systems rather than introducing new ones. And otherwise, again, he states and focuses on how players shouldn't assume devs know of a bug, and to make sure to report it when you see it, and try and give as much detail as possible to help them out so they can reproduce it and get it fixed as easily as possible. Overall, that's the entire dev stream. Was a little bit lengthy indeed. There was a lot of questions asked and answered. Some of them I might have just skipped over because they're just not that relevant and nothing really was found within them. So with that said, I'd like to give a massive thank you to all of my channel members for helping me keep my channel going. And if I presented this well, consider leaving the video a like. And if you're new around here, consider subscribing. We'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.